What if I told you that this was one of the most painful episodes I've written so far? Not the most painful thing I've ever been through, by far, not even close, but the most painful in real-time experience I've talked about so far here on the podcast. It opened an internal conversation and some really hard work that I wasn't expecting. And once I opened that Pandora's box, the oh fuck moments came rolling out and spilling across my journal like a bunch of Smarties when you forgot you already opened the box before you picked it up. I'm going to be talking about my real-time experience around falling into the pit of the comparison trap. My thoughts around defining success for myself and really why it matters to all of us. Because I think that everything most of us think about what success is not only dictated by things our brains and nervous systems aren't necessarily equipped to always view rationally, and might just be completely wrong. And the trap is real. The self-proclaimed success stories splashed across our feeds that may or may not actually be true, the curated highlight reels and self-inflated self-aggrandizements on social media, the picture-perfect photos and videos, and the, let's face it, sometimes inflated success metrics shared on our social feeds. They aren't necessarily designed to motivate you. Many of them are designed to make you feel inadequate, not successful enough, not attractive enough, not productive enough, not healed enough, not wealthy enough. Because if they can convince you that you're lacking something, boy, they can usually sell you just the thing that promises to fix it. And we just keep scrolling to the next thing that will make us feel like we need to be better, smarter, thinner, more than we are right now. And I get it. Because I very recently fell head fucking first into the comparison trap in a pretty big way. And it felt shitty. Not because I didn't know better, but because knowing better and feeling better, they're not always the same thing. So today I want to expose the truth about comparison, share a few insights, and talk about a few things that can hopefully help you start to reclaim your own self-worth, as opposed to basing it on someone else's system of measurement. And to redefine what success means to you. So let's dig into that. Life's messy. Growth is uncomfortable, and healing rarely follows the plan. Welcome to Transformative Journeys, where growth meets grit, healing gets honest, and resilience becomes a practice. Around here, we use storytelling, neuroscience, and a lot of self-compassion to make sense of the human experience and to grow through what we go through. Welcome back to Transformative Journeys with Joanna. I'm your host, and whether you're listening in while you're on your evening walk, keeping me company while you fold your laundry, in your truck during your commute to work, or somewhere in between, I'm really glad you're here. So this week you're getting a front row seat to another one of my existential crises. Another one of my what the fuck just happened here moments that I decided to unpack and excavate the shit out of while I'm right here in the messy middle of it. Well, sort of. By the time this episode drops, the crisis will have happened about a month or so ago. And just so this really lands for you, I was in the middle of what should have been a really proud moment for me, and fell head fucking first into a nice, deep comparison trap. Not just a run-of-the-mill, oh wow, she has a nicer kitchen than me, or even Jesus, how does she keep her figure at this age kind of comparison trap. Nope, not for me. Mine was kind of like toppling headfirst into a full-blown am I good enough chasm, and having someone empty a dump truck of who the fuck do you think you are's and they're better than me's on top. It quietly and unexpectedly hijacked my nervous system. It made me question my self-worth and had me wondering if I should even be bothering to do this, because I don't seem to be crushing it the way some of the other podcasters are. Oh, and it also poked my imposter syndrome with a giant pointy stick. So it came scrambling out of my attic screaming, well, what do you expect and who do you think you are? Yeah, that kind of comparison. And here's a little secret. So I had actually started to draft an idea for an episode on comparison months ago. And this episode, this is not the episode I had planned. But a few weeks ago, I hit a milestone here on my podcast. And before we get any deeper into this, understand that the podcasting world is a very weird one. And maybe even more so for someone like me who jumped in feet first and blindly with no experience in anything that you need to do to produce a podcast. So in one part of my brain, I was genuinely excited. I'd hit 750 downloads after a year of building this tiny little indie podcast all by myself. And that really did feel meaningful for me. I've poured an unbelievable amount of time and energy into this show. Writing, researching, recording, editing, creating social content to go along with the episodes, learning the tech, second-guessing myself, talking myself into continuing, talking myself out of quitting. And I'd been refreshing my stats like it was a slot machine for the previous few days. Waiting. So when I hit that milestone, my first reaction was, oh my God, we did it. And then I opened my social media to share my success story in a Facebook group I'm in that's for podcasters. And suddenly I was scrolling through post after post from people celebrating 10,000 downloads in 3 weeks, 50K in 6 months, monetized in my first 30 days. And I could feel the excitement being sucked out of me like someone had punched a hole in my little balloon of happiness. 1 second I'm proud and I'm excited, and the next I'm questioning everything about what I'd worked so hard on for the past year. Now, let me give you a little extra insight into this reaction. Because what fascinated me afterwards when I, started excavating through the shit pile wasn't that it happened, or even that I was comparing myself. It was how fucking fast it and the downward spiral during it happened. Like seriously fast. Alarmingly fast. It was like someone installed a nitro-fired engine in my limbic system that took it from this is meaningful to who do you think you are in 0 to 60 in about 10 seconds flat. Which was a weirdly humbling experience at the same time. Because I literally talk about this kind of shit here on the podcast all the time. I understand how cognitive distortions can creep in. I understand why social comparison was an important part of our evolution as a species. I understand how easily our nervous systems can get hijacked. I understand that self-worth traps, and because I frequently trip over them, fall into them, and occasionally even manage to, jump right over one, I get them. But you know what? Apparently my limbic system looked at all that stuff and said, "Aw, that's so adorable. Here, try this experience on for size." And don't fool yourself into thinking because I, kind of know all that stuff that I dealt with it very well either. It fit about as good as the size 4 jeans I wore 20 years ago would fit me now. If you know, you know. And I'm going to give you a little peek into my head at the time, poor you, because something I actually wrote down and saved you might find interesting. Some of you might think, yeah, I get how she felt that way. And some of you might think, she can be a bit of a bitch sometimes. And yes, I can. So the logical angel on one of my shoulders is saying, just celebrate it. You're doing good, and this is an awesome milestone for you. So stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Be happy for them. Be happy for you. But the little evil devil on the other shoulder was saying, stop thinking you're ever going to be Mel Robbins or Stephen Bartlett. You're not important enough. You're not good enough. And besides, most of those people in that Facebook group are probably full of shit. And neither of those two thoughts felt very nice at the time. So there I was, spiraling even deeper into the messy middle of a really shitty all-or-nothing success for failure pit, minimalizing all the hard work I do to put out good content in a tiny little show in a sea of perceived greatness, and realizing that just because I understand a bit of neuroscience and psychology and actually try to internalize it and put into practice all the cool stuff I'm learning here as I go, doesn't give me some kind of superpowers. It doesn't make me immune to all this stuff. And it doesn't mean I don't have to work on my resilience every single day. I personally, my friends, am a real-life work in progress, just like all of you. So I think a big part of the problem isn't specifically social media. It's kind of way bigger than that. And the truth is that it's been going on way longer than social media has been around. The world that most of us live in is what I think of as a smarter, better, thinner, prettier system. A system that whispers or yells from every direction, do more, be more, achieve more, monetize more, heal faster, look younger, be thinner, become more successful, be more productive, drink greener smoothies. And if you aren't doing all those things, well, apparently you're behind. But we can sell you exactly what you need to get there as long as you still do the work. It's fucking exhausting and really took a downward turn, sorry for the pun, not long after the turn of the 20th century. So before that, marketers sold products by focusing on their features, their utility, the cost-benefit comparisons, and the real practical benefits of the products. All that started to change when a guy named Edward Bernays entered the marketing game. And stay with me here, because this isn't just a foray into some research rabbit hole I fell into. Yeah, I fall into those kinds of traps too. It's a really cool story about a guy who completely revolutionized advertising and public relations. So Edward Bernays is actually regarded as the pioneer of public relations. The way he pulled human psychology into not just marketing campaigns, but into political campaigns as well, was a radical change from the way things had always been done. And just to give you an idea of this guy's genius, up until the early 1920s, it was taboo for women to smoke in public. One of the tobacco companies realized that this was a serious flaw in market share capacity. He hired Bernays to change that taboo. That happened to be what's considered one of the most successful campaigns in history. He contacted a psychoanalyst who told him that feminists considered cigarettes torches of freedom. And then he built a strategy with the help of a female friend where a group of women's rights activists would light torches of freedom during their march in the New York Easter Day Parade, in front of a pre-notified, of course, group of eager photographers. And that was printed in the New York Times on April 21st, 1929, with the title, "Group of Girls Puff at Cigarettes as a Gesture of Freedom." He was also the brains behind convincing the American public that water fluoridation was safe and beneficial to human health, and with associating bacon and eggs with a healthy breakfast. So this was the beginning of the shift towards selling identities instead of selling products that we see all around us today. We're not buying a new car. We're buying coolness or success. We're not buying skincare and personal products. We're buying desirability, or even trying to buy youth. We're not buying a course or a workshop from someone advertising on Facebook. We're trying to buy the promise that we'll finally become the person we think we're supposed to be. And then feeling inadequate when our success doesn't seem to measure up to theirs. So we go in search of another training package. And if you're constantly exposed to messages suggesting that you're not successful enough, attractive enough, productive enough, wealthy enough, accomplished enough, wow, that's really good for business. Because when we spend years exposed to constant messages from company or people who profit from making us feel inadequate, eventually comparison stops being something we do and becomes the broken mirror we look in and view ourselves in every day. And here's the part I really want you to hear. There's nothing wrong with you. It's all based in evolutionary psychology and how our nervous system is wired. We naturally compare. We did it thousands of years ago when we lived in scattered little tribes to find our place in the hierarchy. And we're wired to seek belonging, status, and approval, and to fear rejection. And a brain that's wired to compare itself to 50 or so people in a village isn't really equipped to deal with it on the kind of scale it has to now because of television, magazines, and social media. The problem isn't that we compare. We've always compared. The problem is that now we live in a world that figured out how to commercialize comparison. Bernays was just the first of many to demonstrate how powerfully human behavior can be influenced by appealing to emotions, identity, and unconscious desires rather than logic, and how to cause it to recalculate what we see as our worth based on that. So now, instead of comparing our kitchen jealously to our neighbors, or how much better we look 25 or 30 years later than the high school cheerleader who walked around with her nose in the air, tell me that bitchy little moment wasn't just me. It can't be just me. We're comparing ourselves every day against celebrities and influencers, airbrushed and edited or even AI generated bodies, displays of wealth and curated lifestyles, self-promoted success stories and transformations, carefully staged authenticity and fake productivity, and a bunch of complete strangers whose real lives we know absolutely nothing about. And somehow, we now treat all that as if it's normal. And even if we know it's curated, our nervous system responds way faster than logic with everyone's doing so much better than me. And I'm not saying that there's nothing but a bunch of liars out there. I'm here. And yeah, I don't post my most gnarly, bad hair, fat clothes day pictures there either. But I am saying you don't know what's really going on in the life behind that picture-perfect post or reel. And at least some of them, I'd be willing to bet, are just full of shit. My smart, logical part of my brain eventually reminds me that I'm comparing other people's presentation layer with my messy middle, uncertain, full of self-doubt, jiggly bits, and real life. but it's not nearly as quick as imposter syndrome, who seems to be able to escape from the duct tape and the attic to scream in my ear. I may have a bit of insight into why, but that knowledge doesn't come creeping out of the woodwork until later. And I think underneath most comparison is something deeper. It's not really about metrics or likes or shares or download numbers. Joy and worth and fulfillment, they can't be measured in numbers. But when the culture we live in constantly blurs the lines between followers and significance, downloads and value, views and importance, we're moving towards some pretty dangerous psychological territory. And whether we're creators or business owners, teenagers, parents, professionals, or just real people living real lives, we're quietly absorbing the belief that if our reality doesn't measure up to all of the staged and curated content that we see, we're not enough. So I had to kind of ask myself, at what point are you just going to let yourself feel proud of what you're doing without any buts? Brene Brown always says, get your butt out of there. And I try to remember that, maybe not before I trip and fall into the comparison trap, but at least once I land, without needing to be as good as, without going viral, and defining my success based on what's meaningful for me and what I've accomplished. Helping people, personal growth, consistency, building something that I hope helps other people. And I'm going to talk a bit about some of the mindset shifts that I had to work on while I was trying so hard to separate, I guess, scale from substance. All right, shifting gears for just a second here, not to sell you shit, I don't have anything to sell. But hey, if you ever come up with an epic idea for swag you'd love to see related to this show, I'm all ears. Do you know there's a blog version of every podcast episode I do? Yep. If listening isn't usually your thing, or you'd like a slightly different take on what we're talking about today, head over to my website. You'll find a link in the show notes, and there's lots of other cool stuff to explore there too. Let me know what you think. All right, let's get back to it. So this part of the episode is probably going to be a little shorter than usual, because so much of escaping the comparison trap usually happens after I've fallen into it. And so much of it revolves around awareness, mindset shifts, and reframing after the spiral slowed down. It's very much a front brain beating my limbic system back into its cave and finding the roll of duct tape so I can slap it across imposter syndrome's mouth and lock it back in the attic. I may cognitively know that success can't only be measured by external factors. But when the world around me says that numbers, downloads, and external validation are the metrics we're supposed to measure our success and identity against, I'll be honest, it's an uphill battle. Some days it's just a little hill, but other days it's the Mount fucking Everest of climbs. Because the truth is, no matter who you are, there will always be someone richer, someone prettier, someone smarter, someone more successful, someone more visible. It's an unwinnable game, and one I really don't want to play. Let's start with a few things that actually helped me. So the first is to try and notice as quickly as you can when the comparison starts. Awareness matters. And the sooner you can start to see it happening, the faster you can put out your hands so you don't land on your face. The second is to have an idea already of what your own real measures of success are. Success doesn't equal worth. And spending some time thinking about what success does equal for you before the trap snaps around your brain feels to me a little like having a ladder to help me climb out of the hole I spiral into. And the third was a hard lesson learned from this experience for me. It's to celebrate wins before exposing myself to social media. Like, really. And I plan to take this one into other areas of my life too, because apparently my imposter syndrome has superpowers that are ignited by unsupervised exposure to podcast Facebook groups. So if you ever find yourself spiraling into comparison, now I'm going to share some of the really tangible things that I did. I sat there in the muck and ickiness at the bottom of the trap, and I wrote out some thoughts around these things. And I think I've thrown some of these questions around in previous episodes, but they were really important for me here. The first one was, does what I'm doing feel meaningful? Do I think it's going to help someone? Am I proud of what I'm doing in the content that I'm putting out there? Does what I'm doing feel aligned with my values? And am I growing myself as a result of doing this? And maybe most importantly, does this still matter if I can't hear anyone applaud it? This week I told you about my recent face-first fall into comparison trap. How it felt shitty, and how even though logically I know better, I still fell into the trap. But how noticing it and choosing to excavate my way out of it instead of quitting or staying all bummed out because of things I read that were written by random strangers in a podcast group helped me zoom back out, put on a better set of lenses to examine what I was feeling with better perspective. Not perfect perspective. I know I will always find things to compare myself or my podcast to, but a more realistic perspective. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. The funny thing here is that nothing about my podcast changed that day. For good or bad. That 750 download milestone wasn't important because of the number. It was important because of what it represented for me. Hundreds of hours of work, tons of learning, showing up even during a high load season, creating something that I'm proud of, but also doubting myself and continuing anyways. And none of that magically disappeared just because someone else's numbers were bigger, or they said they had sponsors reaching out immediately after they launched their podcast. So from now on, one thing I will be doing is trying to remember that there can be some value in the comparison trap. Because it's not necessarily just about other people. I think it's also about not forgetting to measure ourselves against our own value. And that's priceless. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Come say hi on Instagram at transformativejourneys.joanna, or visit my website and say hi there. If you like a little bit more bang for your buck, there's an enhanced version of this podcast on YouTube. It's got on-screen prompts, beautiful visuals, a more immersive experience. So you can head over to my YouTube channel, Transformative Journeys, and check it out there. And if you have an idea you'd like to hear me talk about, leave me a message and you might just see it in a future episode. Until next time, this is Joanna reminding you that it doesn't matter if you fall, even if it's into a comparison trap. What matters is how well you bounce. This is Transformative Journeys. I'll see you next time. Hey, just a disclaimer. This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and should not replace the advice of a medical or mental health expert. I'm not a licensed counselor or therapist, just a human with a mic and a story of growth and resilience. No degree, no fancy letters after my name. I'm a full-time student at the School of Hard Knocks, University of Life, where I figure I'll graduate when I take my last breath. In other words, I'm just Joanna, a fellow human being on my journey through this thing called life, and your guide on this transformative journey.